In this episode, I'm going to share with you a list of 10 plot archetypes. Huzzah! Hello everyone, my name is Aiden and this is AuthorQuest. Thank you so much for joining me as we talk about 10 plot archetypes. An archetype is an original pattern or model of which all things of the same type are representations or copies. I won't go into too much detail of each of these plot archetypes, but I will cover the basics. Do note that as always, this is not an exhaustive list, but if you think of anything that I didn't say or didn't mention, feel free to mention it down in the comments. And if I am wrong about something, also feel free to mention it down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys. I'd love to make this a conversation. Most of these are not exclusive to sci-fi fantasy. In fact, if you take an unlikely genre and mix it with an unlikely plot archetype, that's how you get new and fresh stories. Anyway, no more stalling, let's get into it. Number 1, the heist plot. In every heist plot, there's an important treasure that is impossible to steal. In the theme of rules were made to be broken, a team of individuals, each with a specific skill, is brought on board by a highly motivated and personally invested leader. The plot involves prepping for a heist against all odds. Everything goes wrong, they have to think on their feet and pull the heist off in the moment with less resources than they thought. Plus, a twist. Usually they swap the treasure without the reader knowing. There was a secret plan only the leader of the heist knew, or the treasure was never there in the first place. Number 2, the forbidden love plot. The forbidden love plot involves two people from completely different backgrounds that make it impossible for them to be together due to societal or cultural boundaries. In typical form, the couple meets in unorthodox or significant circumstances. They either can't be in love and/or they disdain each other. They realize they have more in common than they thought. Then they take turns pursuing each other even though they can't be together. One or both of them succumbs to despair and stop trying to pursue the other. Then one of them gets the idea in their head, via a side character, that they should risk it all and tell the other they love them, often in public, but it's not uncommon for it to be private as well. Number 3, the revolution plot. The revolution plot commonly involves a tyrannical government with limitless power and a revolution built up of the oppressed. The plot usually starts with the murder of innocents. This can be civilians in the wrong place at the wrong time, someone who saw too much, or a small pocket of revolutionaries tragically dying while defending themselves and something sought after by the tyrannical government. The death of these innocents spark a rebellion in the hearts of the people. Their goal becomes to overthrow the governing powers that be. The formation of this revolution thrusts individuals into new power and influence over this rebellion. The revolution builds and gains ground. They eventually find a weakness in the tyrannical empire and go head on to exploit that weakness only to find that it is a trap. The revolution barely survives the trap only to regroup, and in one last-ditch effort, a handful of them succeed in infiltrating the empire and bringing it down from the inside by destroying the tyranny's seat of power, like a city or a fortress, or killing the king. They win usually at the expense of an important character who dies heroically to defeat tyranny and allow the revolution to win. Number 4, the prophecy plot. The prophecy plot is a little different than other plot archetypes, as it is less overt and more episodic. The prophecy archetype reveals either a partial prophecy in the beginning and/or ends with the complete prophecy being revealed to the reader. Commonly, the prophecy must be kept secret until the right time. Because of the prophecy, the heroes must go on an adventure. All the while, the question remains, who is the chosen one in the prophecy? Sometimes the motivation of the prophecy is either to change the outcome and stop the prophecy, or it's motivating in that it makes succeeding seem possible. Eventually, it is revealed about the prophecy that there is something that was kept from the main character, either more of the prophecy or an exterior variable that changes what the prophecy means. A great way for this to happen is by the villain using this information to toy with the protagonist. This discourages the main character from completing the quest. Up to this point, the protagonist and the party have been basing their decisions on the prophecy trying to influence events, but now they cast off the prophecy and take fate into their own hands. This inadvertently leads them to win, but also fulfill the prophecy at the same time, regardless of who the chosen one turns out to be. Number 5, the lone wolf finds home. The lone wolf plot archetype involves a main character who is separated from the idea of being a part of a family. They start off by living a hard and tough life, which as a result has made them capable and overly independent. By accidental means, the lone wolf is stuck in a new environment and culture. The lone wolf is treated with love and compassion in a way that they have either never experienced before or not since they lost their last family. The lone wolf denies the compassion because it forces them to confront the ghosts of their past. But the lone wolf can't deny that they fit in very well with this temporary home. In a moment of weakness, the lone wolf denies the compassion and acceptance totally and leaves this new home, causing the emotional turmoil between both parties, only to find out that the place is in danger. Oftentimes, it is in danger because of the lone wolf. When their home is threatened, the lone wolf returns, and through much effort, they overcome the threat to their new home and make peace with those who left. Number 6. The quest. The quest plot archetype is more vague than other plot archetypes, mainly due to the simplicity of its premise. The characters aren't where they need to be, so they go there and it takes a long time. The quest begins with the main characters being given or stumbling across a mission. There's no choice but to go, to save the princess, to get the elixir, to escape the disaster. Along the way, they encounter serialized obstacles and meet new allies and enemies, all the while getting closer and closer to their destination. The traveling gets harder and harder, their resources run low or run out entirely. Just about when they arrive, something stops them completely. They are attacked, captured, and/or the party splits up. But one character continues to see the quest through by themselves. When the one character arrives at the destination, they encounter obstacles too difficult to overcome by themselves. Meanwhile, the other party members encounter an exterior force like a friend, a bartender, or a mentor who helps them realize that they shouldn't have left. At the last minute, they arrive and save their compatriot who never lost faith in the quest. They get what they came for, and they either stay because they had nowhere else to go, or they go home. Great examples of this are Aragon, Wheel of Time, and Legend of Zelda. Number 7. The Great Escape. The Great Escape plot archetype involves the characters being imprisoned and trying to break out. It's very similar to the Heist Plot archetype, except instead of breaking in to steal treasure, they're breaking out to steal freedom. The Great Escape starts with someone new to the prison/camp/dungeon. The warden rules the prison with an iron fist. This new person spends a short time being imprisoned before becoming convicted to escape. They befriend someone who has been in the prison for a while and who shows them the ropes. The main character then comes up with a plan, they set up the escape, and then something goes horribly wrong last minute, but they can't stop because the plan is already in motion. They go for the escape anyway, and with no small amount of daring and luck, they make it out. Either in the prison before they leave, or after they escape, they come face to face with the warden and overcome them as they are the embodiment of their imprisonment. Number 8. The Race to the Treasure. The Race to the Treasure plot archetype is also similar to the Heist plot. The Race to the Treasure plot archetype starts with 2 or more parties finding out about the treasure, or at the very least finding out that the other party also knows about the treasure. After this initial start of the race, it's an episodic back and forth between who has the most information. At one or more points in the story, both parties need the other to figure out the next clue, until the antagonist holds all of the cards, including leverage against the protagonist, usually in the form of a hostage. The protagonist gives the antagonist the last piece of info they need to reach the treasure. The antagonist then leaves the protagonist and friends to die in perilous circumstances. When all is lost, they realize they still have a chance and escape and pursue the antagonist to the treasure. The other option is they are captured by the antagonist and they all go to the treasure. Because plot, the protagonist and friends use their wit to overcome the antagonist. The protagonist then sacrifice the treasure to save their friends, while the antagonist sacrifices their friends to save the treasure, which is their undoing. The protagonist lost the treasure but saved what was important. It's common for one of the protagonists to grab or save a bit of treasure to make it all worth it in the end. Number 9. The Monster is Loose. The Monster is Loose plot archetype involves the protagonist pursuing the monster to either capture or kill the monster, or is it the monster hunting the protagonist? When the monster is loose, the plot is instigated with either a death or destruction that results in fear of the monster. Some people deny the monster exists and chalk up every bad thing that's happened so far to coincidence. Somebody, a victim or somebody related to the victim, catches on or believes that the monster is real and loose. They seek help. The help comes in the form of the detective archetype, or at least someone who has the means to search for the monster. The detective follows the leads, but he can't quite piece the pieces together. The detective follows the clues even when people don't believe him until a person of authority forces the detective to stop. And that's when the monster decides to strike, publicly, and undeniably proving the detective and the victim right. They then pursue, capture, and/or kill the monster. Before I get on to number 10, I'd like to encourage you to check out my brother's channel, Writing Quest. Give him a comment and a subscribe and let him know I sent you. Number 10, the origin story. The origin story plot archetype starts with a nobody or a somebody on the top of their game. In this plot archetype, both fall from their world as they knew it and rise to greater responsibilities, all in the process of becoming more of themselves, typically a better version of themselves. First, we start with the ordinary life with ordinary problems and successes. Then the inciting incident pulls them from the world they knew and opens up an entirely new one, so the main character is split into two worlds. This can literally be two worlds or just figuratively. The protagonist is forced deep into this new world. As they change and their beliefs are tested, they find themselves growing stronger, but it costs them more of their home world, their origin world. Because they are in this new world, they provoke the antagonist. Inevitably, the two worlds crash together whether the protagonist is trying to keep them separate or not. This ultimately costs the protagonist both worlds, or at least puts the fate of both in the balance. This forces the protagonist to confront the antagonist, and they win, usually. After the protagonist wins, they go back to their home world, but they've brought with them a little piece of the new world, and they live happily forever after. Until the sequel. Plot archetypes are by no means rigid in their formulas. They're simply roadmaps to let you know where you are and to where assumed payoffs are going to be. At the end of the day, plot archetypes are just familiar patterns of stories. You may have noticed that none of these plot archetypes can really operate by themselves. I would say that today, and for a long time, most plots have multiple plot archetypes going through them. The origin story, the quest, the prophecy archetypes are a really common trio. Now here's what you can do. You can take each plot archetype, you can separate them into their different plot points, and then you can order them into how you want them to appear, how you want them to go, and then you get a plot outline, a unique plot outline. Now you have an origin story, you have a revolution, and a monster running loose. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a pretty good story outline to me. And now you have a structure to actually rely on, so now you can play around with the story. You can add your characters in, you can add your world building in, you can tweak the little plot points. So like, oh, maybe the monster was a good guy all along. I could keep talking about these plot archetypes. I love thinking about it. I love studying story. I love thinking through stories. But you started off with that plot, with that structure, that story, that archetype that you're working with. If you want to learn more about story, click on this video. Huzzah!